Okay, Mike, we're good.
Okay, so it's not letting me start the video. It's saying that the host has stopped my video.
I'm sorry.
No problem. You don't need to see me anyway.
How about now?
Okay, there it is.
All right.
Okay, the meeting will come to order. Oh, let's see. Wrong script. 1 second. Okay, no. All right, 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, got the right one. Yeah, online meeting of Leeward Planning Commission will now come to order. It's Thursday, February 18th, 2021. The time is 9:40. Based on the governor's 17th proclamation related to the COVID-19 emergency response, we're holding this meeting online. This is to maintain physical distancing and to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Public can observe the meeting on YouTube live streaming by following the link provided on the county website or by using the URL advertised on the agenda. Video recording will be accessible on the same YouTube channel for those who are not able to watch live. The minutes and transcripts will also be posted on the county website at a later date. With respect to public testimony, is there any public testimony confirmed for today? Not at all. Okay. There'll be no written testimony or requests. Okay. I'd like to remind all participants the protocol of this online meeting. Please silence your phone and any other devices near you. Only one person can speak at a time. So raise your hand to be recognized by the chair before you speak. Please speak directly into your microphone and keep your microphone muted while you're not speaking. If you talk over each other or if microphones pick up background noise, the dialogue will be indiscernible and can't be transcribed. Thanks so much for everybody's cooperation. I'd like to introduce my fellow commissioners. Please raise your hand when you're called. Vice Chair Max Newberg. Commissioner Nancy Carr-Smith. Commissioner Barbara DeFranco. Commissioner Perry Kealoha. Commissioner Mark Van Pernis. Commissioner Faye Yates is excused today. I'm the chairperson, Mike Vitusik. We do have a quorum to hold this meeting. Mark, is there a question? You're on mute. You're on mute. There you go.
You stated that, for the record that there was no public testimony. On the second matter, I see several written requests, written testimony, written requests for contested case hearing, and some written testimony from 2 or 3 people. So I'd like to get that matter resolved and corrected.
Yes, the public testimony that's been submitted will be considered by the Planning Commission. All we're saying is that there's no additional members of the public present today to present. So we will proceed and we will consider the public testimony that's already been submitted, and we will discuss the contested case matter when it's appropriately agendized. Continuing on, we have our staff in attendance: Deputy Corporation Counsel Malia Hall in Hilo. Hi, Malia. We have Malia is the attorney for the Planning Commission. We have Planning Director Zendo Kern, who's with us in Kona. How's it, Zendo?
Aloha.
Planning Program Manager Maya Jackson in Hilo. Planner Alex Roy in Kona. Leeward Planning Commission Secretary Noriko Sauer in Kona. Also, we have Private Secretary to the Planning Director Rochelle Lake in Hilo. And I see Tracy Camaro is here as well. And April Supernaut, also staff member who will be helping out today from Hilo, I imagine. Hi, April. And I believe that's it for staff. If anyone else is there, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, cool. With that, we'll proceed with our agenda.
Oh, Mike, this is Malia.
Yes, Malia.
There's also Jean Campbell is the deputy for the planning department.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
New. Hello,
Awesome, right on. Welcome, Jean.
thanks.
Okay. With that, we'll proceed with our agenda. Normally we proceed with statements from the public, but because there are no registered members of the public to testify today, we'll move on to the new business. And the first item on the agenda. Well, actually, I'm sorry. One more thing before I move on to the item on the agenda. I'll take a second to say mahalo to our departing commission members, Nancy Carr-Smith and Perry Kealoha, who have done amazing work here on the Planning Commission and who have reached the end of their term. Both have served in leadership capacity, with Nancy as our chair and Perry as our vice chair. And just want to take a second to appreciate their contributions that they've made over the last few years. So thank you guys so much. Zendo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. If I would, a little latitude, if you wouldn't mind. Give me a second.
Oh, of course. Go ahead.
All right.
Go ahead. Yep.
Thank
absolutely.
you. Just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to both commissioners, Nancy and Perry. As a former commissioner, I know what it takes. I know what it takes to be a diligent commissioner. It takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and a lot of thought, a lot of mind-wrenching decisions at times, a lot of balancing, a lot of various things. And as a volunteer, that's a heavy burden to bear. And we really, really, really appreciate it. All the way around. I know the entire staff appreciates it. I know the previous administration appreciates it. And I know this administration appreciates it. So I can't thank you folks enough. You guys have been excellent, excellent commissioners. I got to see folks from both sides of the counter, which is really fun to get that perspective, and a massive appreciation always coming from a great place. We have prepared certificates of appreciation for you both that you'll both be getting. This one really hard to see with my background. Can you all see that? Okay, now you can see. Got one of these awesome ones.
Awesome.
Nancy. Got one of these awesome ones for Perry. Normally this would come with a some hugs and an awesome lunch. Instead, it comes with some shakas, big mahalos, and much appreciation. And when this is POW, you know, I'd love to have lunch and happy to have lunch with you guys anytime. So again, just a massive mahalos, massive appreciation. Thank you guys so very much from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of, I know, all of the staff. We really appreciate you folks.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Perry.
You're welcome. I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you folks. You know, the 5 years on the Board of Appeals and then 5 years on the Planning Commission, I've spent 10 years with a bunch of you folks, mostly the staff, and really have gotten to respect and appreciate you folks. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I'll miss you guys. And until next time. And April, haven't seen you in ages. Hi, April.
If I may, I'd like to echo Nancy's sentiments. I've gained as much as I've given, and I've come to appreciate the position and effort put in by the county staffers, most especially, that goes underappreciated, I think, by the community at large. And I want you to know that I appreciate what you do, and I've learned a lot, more than I ever expected prior to coming on board the commission. So again, I'm grateful for what you do.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much. We'll honor you by moving on with a smooth and efficient meeting. Okay, I guess with no public testimony, can we have a motion to close public testimony? Nancy,
So moved.
thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Newberg, awesome. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, motion carries. New business. The applicant is Ernest and Elizabeth Young. The amended rezone 04-000012. Applicant for an amendment to condition C, time to secure final subdivision approval of change of zone ordinance number 04-149, which rezoned 1.8628 acres of land from agricultural, 5 acres, Ag 5A, to single family residential, 20,000 square feet. Property is located in the southwest corner of the intersection of Mahilani Drive and Mamalahoa Highway, Kalawa 1st and 2nd, North Kona, Hawaii, TMK 7-3-011:068. Staff presentation will be by Tracy Lee Camaro. Tracy, would you be able to take it away?
Yes, thank you so much. Allow me to just share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen? Great. Okay. Good morning, members of the Leeward Planning Commission. As the chairman had mentioned, this next presentation is for amendments to the Change of Zone Ordinance 04-149 for Ernest and Elizabeth Young. The subject property is located within the North Kona district. On your screen, you will see the subject property identified by the red pointer. The top portion of the map is heading in the direction of Waimea, and the bottom portion of the map is heading in the direction of Kealakekua. Other important places in the area include the Kona International Airport, located just makai of the subject property. The current applicants purchased the property in 2016 and have been diligently working towards complying with the conditions of the Change of Zone Ordinance and pending subdivision. The applicants were made aware that they were out of compliance with time conditions of approval. To rectify this oversight, the applicants are requesting a 5-year time extension to come in and complete the conditions of the ordinance. Reasons for the request: 04-149 went into effect on December 8, 2004. At the time of the ordinance, the previous landowner, Lillian Mahi, proposed to subdivide the subject parcel into 3 lots, with at least 20,000 square feet in size. Condition C of the ordinance allowed for the applicant 5 years to secure final subdivision approval. Despite initiating the subdivision process in 2005, Ms. Mahi was unable to complete the requirements of the tentative subdivision approval by the time she had passed away in 2008. The applicant had been diligent in receiving 8 time extensions to their subdivision time approval, with the most recent being March 30th, 2015. Ms. Mahi's children were unable to complete the project and subsequently sold the property to the new applicants, Ernest and Elizabeth Young. During the process of working to comply with the conditions of the rezone, Ernest and Elizabeth Young were made aware that they were out of compliance with Condition C of the change of zone ordinance. And to rectify the oversight, the applicants are requesting a 5-year time extension to secure the final subdivision approval. On your screen, you will see the subject property identified in the red outline. The subject property is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Mahilani Drive and Mamalohoa Highway. The top portion of the map is heading in the direction of Waimea, and again, the bottom portion of the map is heading in the direction of Kealakekua. Mamalohoa Highway is located to the right of the subject property and is considered a minor arterial road that serves much of the Kona district. Mahilani Drive is located to the top of the subject property, which provides access to the subject property as well as other lots in the area. It should be noted that Mamalohoa Highway is owned and maintained by the State Department of Transportation, and Mahilani Drive is owned and maintained by the county. The county zoning for the subject property is RS20, and surrounding properties in the areas are zoned as agricultural and single-family residential. The state land use designation for the subject property is urban, as indicated by the pink color, and some of the surrounding properties are agricultural, which is indicated in the green color. The general plan land use allocation guide map designated the property and much of the surrounding area as low-density urban. Across the Mamalohoa Highway and Malka of the subject property, which is shown on the left of your screen, is the white area, which is designated as extensive agriculture. This is the Kona urban area map. The subject property outlined in white on this slide is located within the Kona urban area, which you can see is delineated by the red line that stretches from the top of your screen to the bottom and almost follows in the same direction as Mamalohoa Highway. Here is an image of the applicant's proposed site plan. For reference, Mamalohoa Highway is located at the top of the screen and Mahilani Drive is located here on the left-hand side. Again, this is the proposed subdivision site plan that was submitted by the previous landowner in 2004 to allow for the 3 proposed lots. Here is an aerial photo of the subject property, which is outlined in red and showing the surrounding area. To the left of the property, you have Mahilani Drive. Above the property, you can see Mamalohoa Highway. Across the Mamalohoa Highway, you can see the Holy Rosary Catholic Mission Church. To the right of the subject property is the Kingdom Hall of the Jehovah Witness Church. You can see on your screen a driveway to the subject property coming from Mamalohoa Highway, as well as a driveway to the property that comes from Mahilani Drive. This is a view which shows the Mahilani Drive intersection with Mamalohoa Highway facing south on Mamalohoa Highway. The subject property is to the right corner of the photo. This is a photo showing the access off of Mamalohoa Highway. The upper left photo is a view of the subject property's Mamalohoa Highway frontage, which is shown on the left. The lower right photo is showing the view of the existing access point to the subject property from Mamalohoa Highway. Much of the subject property's frontage on Mamalohoa Highway is covered with vegetation, as you can see in some of the photos. These photos show the views from Mahilani Drive. The upper left photo is the view facing Mauga towards Mamalohoa Highway with the subject property located on the right. The lower right site photo is showing the view of the existing access point to the subject property from Mahilani Drive. The planning director's proposed amendment to condition D relating to access. Now, after you received the background and recommendation, the planning director received comments from the state DOT that brought forth information that required the following amendment. To understand this amendment, it is important that I address key points in the history for the subject parcel with you on this slide. In 1979, the previous landowner was granted an agricultural access to the subject property from Mamalohoa Highway by the State Department of Transportation. During the initial change of zone process in 2004, the planning department received comments from the police department as well as the state DOT requesting that access to the property from Mamalohoa Highway be restricted and instead require all access to the property be taken from Mahilani Drive. Based on these comments, the Planning Director and Planning Commission recommended Condition D in Ordinance Number 04149 to require all access to the subject property be taken from Mahilani Drive, which was reflected in the draft ordinance that was sent to the County Council. Based on our research, it appears that DOT's comments may not have been transmitted along with the draft ordinance to the County Council, which subsequently amended Condition D to allow the subject property access from Mamalohoa Highway. Condition D was amended on October 19, 2004 to read as you see on the bottom of your screen. Now, throughout this amendment process, DOT confirmed their prohibition of an access to Mamalohoa Highway as the property no longer qualifies for an agricultural access since the property was rezoned to single-family residential zoning and has initiated the subdivision process as well as received a state land use boundary amendment. As DOT has the final authority over driveway accesses from state right-of-ways, the Planning Director has changed his recommendation to amend Condition D to state the following. Access to the proposed lot shall be from Mahilani Drive. Access shall meet the requirements of the Department of Public Works. The existing driveway onto Mamalohoa Highway shall be removed prior to the issuance of final subdivision approval. With that, the Planning Director is recommending a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the Hawaii County Council on the amendments to Ordinance Number 04149 based on the Planning Director's recommendation with conditions. That concludes my presentation, and if there are any questions, I can open the floor to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Van Pernis.
This proposed project is in my district, and I drive that road, Mamalohoa, every day, twice. I'd like to ask Ms. Camaro or Mr. Kern, how many new houses have been built since the original 2004 application in the subject subdivision up to Makalei and Colloqua Estates? In other words, how much has the traffic increased? I would point out from my experience that it's been dozens and dozens of new houses and cars, and there are times pre-COVID and starting again now where Mamalohoa is stopped and backed up with traffic. Now, I don't begrudge these people their subdivision, but why did the county planning department not know or not realize on their own that access from Mamalohoa was an impossibility and had to be eliminated?
Thank you, Mr. Van Furnace. Director Kern here. I'll take the question. We do not have the access or the data. I'm sure we have the access to it. We don't have the data to tell you what how many homes are built up in there. So we're not going to be able to provide that with you today. There was a history that Ms. Camaro did lay out on why that driveway was allowed there at the time. And at the time, it was an agriculture driveway based on agriculture use. Currently, we're reviewing it as it is now with the favorable recommendation with the conditions that are present.
Very good, but it doesn't answer the question of why didn't the department review the increased traffic on Mamalohoa and originally make a recommendation of no access from Mamalohoa for this residential subdivision when and instead of waiting for the state to point it out. And I'd also point out that there's been 2, maybe 3 traffic studies on Mamalahoa since this 2005 or 2004 approval. Why weren't those reviewed?
It seems to me as though that the department got that information in time and they amended their recommendation in time to provide the recommendation that they think is appropriate. So we have what's in front of us, and the recommendation is that all traffic come off of Mahilani Drive for now. So, you know, I think we're at a good place to continue discussion. Is there anything else? Yes, Commissioner Van Pernis.
I agree with you, Mr. Vatusic, and I don't begrudge these folks a subdivision, but we rely upon a thorough investigation and informed recommendation from the planning department and a planning director, not from some state agency. So I think there's
So-
been a complete
Yeah, so-
failure. Yeah,
Okay,
I think
so
my
Mr. Van Pernis, we send out an application to all the various agencies for their comment. We receive those comments and we put them into our background report and our recommendations. That's exactly what's happened on every single application over the last 20 years. That is exactly what happened here. Tracy has done an excellent job, and the planning department tries our very best to meet the needs of our community and our applications. Thank you very much.
Yep. So I think they got the recommendation right. You know, they've taken into account the effects, and you know, I agree that sometimes it would be nice to have things a little farther in advance, but I think we got there at the end of the day. So, is there any other questions? Go ahead,
Right.
Commissioner.
This ordinance, the original ordinance, it expired in 2009. Why wasn't there a new application rather than an amendment to a 15-year-old expired ordinance?
I mean, we cover this many times. When it comes to zoning, the zoning is tied to the land, and so the zoning stays with the land. The ordinance is considered stale, and it's up to the planning department to determine whether that zoning is appropriate, which it appears that they believe this zoning is appropriate. So in that case, it's simpler in order to extend the zoning rather than going through the process again. And I think it's appropriate, and this is the pretty standard practice at this point for a stale ordinance. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to commend Tracy for her presentation. I thought it was very thorough and had some great history and stories, which I appreciated having those inserted there. And it was very pretty too. Thank you. And yeah, Mr. Van Pernis, I don't really understand why we want to question the department on this. You're asking questions that have already been cured. And like Mike said, we've got to the place that we wanted to get to, and that's what we should be talking about, not what ifs. So that's my input. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, Commissioner Van Pernis.
Yes, in regards to the new proposed ordinance, the amendment, it states in one condition that the subdivision must be completed within 5 years. Is that sentence incomplete because it doesn't state what happens if that 5-year requirement is not met? And I don't propose that the zoning be lost, but that after another 5 years, where we've gone 20 years without subdivision, that a new application be appropriate. So I would ask if that condition of the new amended ordinance has any consequence if the 5 years is not met, or does it mean nothing?
So I can answer that, Commissioner Van Pernis. So going down to condition O, if the 5 years aren't met, The applicants will have to come back to the planning commission and go through this process again and request for an additional time extension at that time if they can't complete any of the final subdivision.
And that's with no additional conditions or no penalty whatsoever.
At that time, any additional conditions could be imparted upon review of the secondary extension, just like what we're doing now. The ordinances become stale. We're taking a look at the zoning and determining if there are any updated conditions that need to be put in place. That's kind of the idea of what's happening here and not what will be happening in the future. I feel like condition O could be updated to include that it would be before planning commission review as well as being submitted to the county council for appropriate action. Would that make sense to everybody?
Yes, that would. Typical planning department process is that before this ordinance would go to county council, it would come into the planning department and the director would direct it to the planning commission to make a recommendation on it. And we would essentially start this all over again, as well as what I just kind of did.
Commissioner Van Pernis, go ahead.
Why can't that be stated in the amended ordinance?
It will be. It will be stated as condition O of the recommendations to the planning, to the county council, and then it will be up to them to include it in their ordinance. We're purely a recommendatory body to the county council for a zoning change or time extension. So we can make the recommendation in our conditions, and then it'll be up to the county council to incorporate that or not. I would actually like to, are there any other questions from the commission? Okay, I would like to ask a couple questions. They're a little bit more general, so you'll have to pardon me for that. But I just thought this was an interesting example where you have a longtime Kama'aina family in the Mahis who were attempting to subdivide for family purposes and obviously ran into some issues with being able to complete that subdivision. And I just wanted to take a second to try to take a look at the barriers that prevented them from having being able to complete the subdivision and allow their family to take over. Is there any indication as to why the original applicant was unable to complete the requirements?
Not that I know of. I know Ms. Mahi, she immediately came in and she started the subdivision process 1 year after the ordinance was approved. However, she did pass away in 2008, approximately around 1 year before she could have come in for that administrative time extension. I know she submitted the subdivision application. She got tentative subdivision approval, and her as well as her heirs have been diligent in receiving time extensions to continue the process. I'm not too sure where they stand right now. I think maybe the applicants, we have them in the meeting right now. Maybe they can kind of direct us as far as what was completed for the subdivision process.
That would be the question, is what conditions of tentative subdivision approval were hanging them up? What was not met in that regard?
Commissioner Vitusic, I don't think we have that information at hand. We could take a recess and research it and get back to you.
No, that's
But we
all
don't
right.
have it at hand.
I just, just looking at it and, looking at one of the conditions being the fair share contributions. And, just for me, my own education purposes, trying to understand where that comes into play and, seeing how potentially $9,000 per lot fair share contribution for a family trying to make a subdivision for their kids could hang them up on not having funding in order to do that. And I just basically, was trying to figure out if the numbers on fair share contributions are uniform across the board for the entire island, or if they're different depending on the value of the property. I mean, looking at this where we're asking for a fair share contribution of $15,000 per lot. There are parts on the island where property is significantly cheaper than $15,000. And, are we going to ask someone in Naalehu who's subdividing to make that same contribution that would be worth more than the value of their lot? It seems to me like this has pretty significant consequences on the ability to create affordable housing. So I just was hoping we could have a short discussion on that as it relates to this case.
I'll chime in here, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so when a fair share, it is basically charged evenly across the island for any application, whether it was coming in Ka'u or in Hawaii. There is the ability for the council to amend it or adjust it. The fair share increases every year by the Honolulu CIP, Consumer Price Index, CPI. Keep on messing those two up. And so that's how it goes from, increases over the time. And it's basically it's offset impacts, and originally derived from impact fee ordinances that were proposed that never went anywhere. And then the council started to kind of implement them, and it was kind of here and there. And so during the beginning of the 2000s, under Chris Ewan, he basically put them in as conditions within any rezoning ordinance, and then they've kind of lived there ever since as you move through. Now, if you're doing agriculture land, that doesn't necessarily come up, but on residential it does. And the concept is that you're basically creating more lots, you're creating more density, and there's some type of impact to the areas. So the fair share money is spent within the geographical area. It has to be within the judicial area. It has to have a rational nexus, and it has to be used for capital improvement type of projects. So what we're seeing now is, say, for an affordable housing project that was committed to, say, 100% affordable or a portion thereof, the fair share is generally waived or requested to be waived at that point in time. So there is room for discussion, and I think there's room to potentially look at a better way.
So to follow up on that, the fair share contributions are established as a condition within zoning ordinance and not as a result of county code.
That's correct.
So it's a case-by-case assessment then as to whether or not they apply, because it's not codified.
It's a case by case, but it's almost treated as if it were codified. So in every single rezoning ordinance that's creating additional residential lots, we would have fair share in there. And so, for example, if there was a rezoning ordinance that was done 25 years ago that didn't have it at the time, and it was coming in for a time extension like this, then the fair share conditions would be put in there. But you're right, it's not codified, but it's essentially treated as if it were, because it's in every single one.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Pernis.
Mr. Kern, is it the county's position at how much money an applicant has and how they spend it a reason beyond their control to get a time extension?
I'm not exactly sure if I understand that question, but when an application comes in for a time extension or even a new application, we assess it based on the merits of the application, the general plan, the CDP, and every single element that goes into making a land use decision, and base the recommendation on that.
Can you please answer the question of
I'm
whether
working on understanding it.
the question is a circumstance beyond the control of an applicant is required for a time extension, correct?
Circumstances beyond their control is yes, I believe that's yes.
Are we still speaking
Is-
about
is
the
it-
application at hand? I just want to make sure that we're staying on track, guys.
Yeah.
Are we referring to any kind of hypothetical situations, or are we talking about this specific application?
Don't interrupt. I'm
What was that,
asking
Mr. Van Pernis?
don't interrupt, Miss Jackson.
Mr. Van Pernis,
So Commissioner Van Pernis, you're going to have to be more respectful to staff and to our corporation counsel. It is her duty to inform us of the agenda and that we're on track with sunshine laws and to be, she's doing her job. And please be respectful. And if you'd like to direct something to her, please request from me to have the floor in order to ask a question of her. We have to follow the rules of order in this meeting, and everything's got to go as the way it should, okay? Are there any other questions? Hold on. Are there any other questions specifically about this agenda item for council, for staff? Okay, last one, Commissioner Van Pernis, and then we will move forward with the
My
applicant.
question now is, as before, concerns this application. What circumstance beyond the control of the applicant justifies this request for an extension? And is the financial condition, is the planning department taking their financial condition as a reason for circumstance beyond their control?
are you referring to this?
Director Kern, we are addressing an application from the young Ohana who purchased the property after the ordinances had expired. So clearly this is through no fault of their own that the ordinance were expired, because they have purchased the property after the fact that it expired. They are the party who we are considering. So with that, we will move forward with the applicant's presentation. We have Ernest and Elizabeth Young. Are you guys available? Okay, hey, how's it?
Yeah. Hey, how's it?
Please, right on. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth on this matter now before the Leeward Planning Commission?
Yes.
I do.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and area of residence?
Well, my name is Ernest Young. This is my wife, Elizabeth Young, and we live on the top of Mahilani Drive. Yeah, Kailua, Kona, Hawaii.
Right on. So have you guys received the background and recommendations report from the planning department?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the planning director's recommendation, including the revised conditions?
Yes.
Okay, right on. Would it be possible for you guys to give us a little bit of background on yourselves and then on give us a presentation on the application today?
Okay, well, I was born and raised here. I grew up up Mauka, next to Captain Cook, and currently we are business owners in town. We have a gallery. I'm an artist, and my wife is a broker, and we have 3 wonderful kids. And the reason we're trying to rezone is kind of the same reason the Mahis did. It's to leave something for our children later on. So, and then they're asking about the application as well.
Did you want us to give you any history from what we've done so far, or what information? I wasn't sure.
That would be terrific. Yeah, if you could give us a little bit of background on what you guys have done so far, and then the information that Ernest gave us on what you're hoping to accomplish is super helpful. But please go ahead.
Okay.
So yeah, so our hopes is to finish what Lily and Mahi started. When we purchased the property, that was kind of one of the hopes we could, to be able to leave it behind for our kids. We put together the packet to, what we've learned so far is we pretty much need the time extension. So we did talk to the water department, and there's only 1 meter that needs to be installed, and we were able to be granted a time extension on that. And now just to finalize the subdivision is just the 5-year extension, so that we can go ahead and of course address all the different conditions, like you mentioned, the fair share. You want to mention the only new thing is the road?
On the, what do you mean?
The roadway.
Do we have it paved? What do you mean?
No, the access. So
the access being blocked.
Yeah. So for
yeah,
us, it was brought up to us kind of new just this past week that we wouldn't have access to the Mamalahoa Highway because that was in the original ordinance. So that's kind of the new, we were hoping to keep that, but we understand that it doesn't look like it's going to be possible. And we still would like to move forward with access just to the Mahilani Drive.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Is there any questions from commissioners of the applicants? Commissioner Van Pernis?
Mr. and Mrs. Young, when is this subdivision going to be completed?
4 or 5 years.
Do I have to hit mute?
Do we have to hit any buttons or can you still hear us?
No, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh,
Well, if all goes well and everything goes smoothly, as soon as possible. We don't really have any things holding us back at this point. No one can tell the future, of course, but if we move forward and things kind of go the way we're hoping, we will try to have this done. I mean, even within a year, hopefully. I mean, just depends.
prior to 5 years.
But definitely not 5 years. I mean, we're definitely trying to have this done as soon as we can.
Going to ask for you're not going to ask for another 5-year extension?
We can't look into the future. We sure hope not.
Isn't it 4 or 5 year extension for now? But we're hoping to have it done before the 5 years.
Yeah, our plan is to finalize it within that 5-year span. We don't have any plans to push past that. But just like how we've dealt with COVID this year, we really don't know what the future holds. But to our knowledge right now, we do not plan to go past that 5-year.
Willing to agree that if you do go past 5 years, you'll submit a new application for a subdivision?
Do we ask what happens if we don't finalize this? What does the land go back to?
Yeah, we can. I mean, that makes sense.
If that did happen and we weren't able to complete this in this 5-year span, what would happen to the property? Would it go back to agriculture or would it stay in the residential zoning? Does
Probably go back to
anybody know?
Yeah.
My position,
Hold on, Commissioner Van Pernis, hold on. I think Director Kern, if you'd like to take that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the property would basically go back to the state that it's in right now. It'd still be zoned, but it would be stale, so you wouldn't be able to complete the subdivision.
Okay.
And for it to go all the way back to, say, ag, then the director at that point would have the opportunity to do a planning director initiated downzoning to bring it back down.
But it would basically be the same situation that we're in now.
Correct.
But like you said, we're hoping not to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I mention or add something?
Go ahead,
I
of course.
believe one of the conditions for the Mahis to switch it from ag to the residential was to finalize the subdivision. So that's why our goal is to get this finalized. And I wasn't sure how far back it would go if we couldn't. But absolutely, we are not planning on taking longer than 5 years, Lord willing.
Okay, Commissioner Van Pernis?
yes. Could you answer the question, please? Are you willing to have or to make a new application if you don't complete the subdivision within 5 years referred to in this amended ordinance? And I want to point out that it's the planning director's discretion on whether it goes back to ag zoning. And I, for one, would be opposed to that. It makes no sense to go back to ag zoning. It should stay residential. But I'm asking again, if you'll answer the question, yes or no, are you willing to complete the subdivision in 5 years? And if not, submit a new application?
If that's requested.
I think that the applicants have stated their intention to complete the application within 5 years, and they've stated their intention to follow any relevant required procedures thereafter. So I think that's a closed matter. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Carr-Smith?
And in addition to that, the conditions say that they have the right to come back for more time if they need it. So what Mr. Van Pernis is talking about is hypothetical, and it's not what we're approving or disapproving today.
So are there any other questions for the applicants from any other commissioners? I have a question. I would like to know if you guys believe that the fair share contributions that are being requested are overly burdensome on your ability to create a subdivision for your family.
Yes.
It's yes, it's a little hefty. When we looked into it in the beginning, it was around,
No.
I believe, 12, and they said it was not even too far before that, it was 9. And it was kind of funny she said that, because I was like, well, 9 would have been better. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, it is a little hefty, but you know, we have faith that we're gonna put our best foot forward and be able to do it, whether you know it's high or not. But if it you know, if there's something could be adjusted, we would be extremely grateful. I mean, just to help us get through everything, because there's not only we have to install water meters, and I've talked to a lot of people that have done this through our business, through the gallery, and they say you never know what can come up. There can be unforeseen things that or cost more money. So we try to budget and make sure that we're prepared for everything, and we are moving forward, looking good. But yes, to answer that question, if something could be adjusted to where it's a little not so steep, we would really appreciate that. Absolutely.
And I mean, just to completely clarify, there's absolutely nothing that we can do as a commission in order to adjust that. That would have to be from the county council. That would be your next step.
Okay.
But I just want to have that considered, because when we're looking at creating affordable housing, allowing people who have lived here, grown up here, to stay on the land, to provide land for their families, I think that's a consideration that needs to be discussed.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Director Kern, I don't know what our avenues for discussing that are and for forwarding recommendations onto the council, but I do want to discuss that here for this case.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will defer to confirm with our corporation counsel, but I believe you folks as the commission would have the opportunity to propose an amendment to adjust that. And if that is confirmed, then I would think the methodology in which you do that would probably be part of that discussion, because each one of the dollar amounts go to a specific requirement. So is it a general overall percentage, but I would want to confirm with the Corp Council that that's not an issue.
Hi, yes, yeah, I mean, you guys are basically making a recommendation, right? So at this point, you probably would want to think of, so that's not arbitrary, kind of, what are the parameters of that? So you're saying, like, if it's a family that is just doing a non-commercial type of subdivision with, less than 4 lots or something like that. I don't want to put any words in your guys' mouth. I think the commission can think for itself, but yes, you have the power to make that recommendation to council.
And I agree with your wording there, that the idea for a non-commercial subdivision for family purposes, I think that is very important to be considered, with a small number of lots, 3 lots. Figuring out the best way of communicating that to the council, whether it is as a recommendation attached to what would it be, condition L, that we believe the county should consider when determining whether fair share application costs apply, whether the commercial nature of the subdivision, whether it's been proposed for family estate purposes or not, in determining whether or not the applicant should be responsible. Maya, is that a hand raised? Oh, cool. I like that.
Etiquette.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Vatusik. I just learned how to use the Zoom hand raise tool. So I appreciate the discussion that you folks are having about this. I just want to kind of throw out that you are the Leeward Commission. We also have a Windward Commission, and fair share is applied island-wide. So you kind of want to consider that as well, and whether there would be fairness across the board and how it's applied island-wide. For example, if you guys end up giving relief consistently to rezones that come before you for family estate planning purposes, Windward Commission may not be doing that. So I don't know if it's worthwhile, if you're heading in that direction, to have a discussion at a joint meeting in order to ensure that there's some type of fairness applied towards fair share across the island.
In my opinion, the fairness would be applied if this were actually a codified ordinance, instead of being a case-by-case application of fair share contributions. I believe that because it is not codified, that we are responsible for reviewing it on a case-by-case basis, and anyone else could do the same until such point that it is codified. For now, I think that adding language to that condition L, reflecting what Malia, our corporation counsel, stated, would be a benefit, because we are purely providing a recommendation. We're getting the discussion going that they will have to continue with county council, and indicating that this non-codified additional expense reduces people's ability to create affordable housing, to provide a family-based subdivision for their children, and it has a regional effect on all of us. So I think it's a good discussion to have, and a good discussion for them to carry forward with the county council. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
Yeah, in an effort to make sure we remain on topic and on this specific agenda item, and also wondering about setting precedent, I wonder if we could just add something general, like just a request to consider reducing it in this case. But yet at the same time, I think encouraging further conversation about this. To me, it seems like the best way that this might be adjusted is based on land value, or property value rather. So I think that would be a fair way for fair share to be looked at. But
I agree in this case, because this is new and we're taking on a different approach to it, that we have a general request that goes to the council, and that they have the actual discussion on it, because they're the ones that have the power to change anything. Commissioner Van Pern, Commissioner DeFranco, go ahead.
Mike, I just really, Commissioner Van-Tusik, I really appreciate that you've opened this discussion up. I think it's very valuable to all of us, for the whole island, to have this kind of discussion for families here that want to do something for the Keiki and the future generations. So I totally support what Nancy said in putting something general in there, staying on focus of moving forward. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say the options would be a couple options to consider. You could offer up an amendment, or again, specifically have that discussion and then point the county council to these minutes for them to read, to understand the discussion, the nexus of this would be another option.
Okay. Commissioner Van Pernis.
Yes, with all due respect to the Youngs and other Kamanas, I think you're getting into very dangerous territory. Discussion can be had, of course, but this needs to be a council ordinance. How do we, without any financial information on this property and with the Youngs, how do we determine what recommendation we should make? How do we control whether the subdivisions go to the kids or are sold at market value, which in this case are hundreds of thousands of dollars? We'll want to do something for the Kamanas, but every developer will claim some sort of Kamana relationship if we don't precisely state what the situation is. So I would say that this is very dangerous and should be a matter of discussion with the council and not be part of this ordinance.
I agree with you, Commissioner Van Pernis. Absolutely, that this is a discussion that needs to take place above the planning commission level on a specific project. That being said, I feel like it's our duty to initiate that discussion. And since we have no power to do anything about it, we can make recommendations for amendments to condition L. My proposed recommendation would be that the county council will consider whether fair share contributions apply based on non-commercial subdivision of less than 4 lots for family purposes. And then we continue on that if is determined that fair share applications apply, it would continue with the rest of it and it would be the same language. Yes, Commissioner Van Pernis.
What family purposes? How do you control the waiver of or lessening of financial contributions like this when in the future, if lots are sold, what if they're sold immediately after subdivision or market value, or if they're sold years later? I think it's very dangerous to consider this matter without extensive discussion and legal input, particularly in regards to what's family purposes.
Commissioner Kealoha.
Yeah, I would say if we're going to make that recommendation, that some stipulation be added that similar to home exemptions and so forth, if the property sold within a certain time period, then the back fees would be owed, because everybody's going to make the claim that they're doing it for family purposes, but there's nothing to preclude them from sale otherwise. So the county would have to have some means of recouping the expected expenses if it turned out to be a flip, so to speak.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yep, I agree with that. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
I'm not, I don't think commercial is the right word that should be used in there. Commercial
what do you
can mean many other things. What I had jotted down, so this is just another idea. So
Sure.
if condition L could be amended to say the last sentence before the breakdown on the numbers, the fair share contribution shall be as county council deems reasonable in this situation, which may be less than recommended. It's just general, and they will listen to our minutes, and it's just trying to get the conversation going without us really being getting too specific about.
Yeah, I mean, it could be less when considering the merits of the individual application. Would that suffice?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd be good with that language. I mean, I just feel like the important thing is that they have the discussion and they have the opportunity to have the discussion. And I agree with Commissioner Van Pernis that there's a lot that needs to be looked into with this. And I think obviously the best way would be to actually codify it. And until that time, we have to take everything case by case. Also agree with Commissioner Kealoha that there should be a provision for recouping expenses upon a sale after a number of years. But those are all discussions that they can have at the county council level. Director Kern, would you be okay with that proposed minor tweak in that language for condition L that Commissioner Carr-Smith proposed?
Could you repeat that to me?
Within condition L, the last sentence before the numbered items, would read, the fair share contribution shall be allocated as the county council deems reasonable in this situation, which may be less when considering the merits of the application.
It's the fair share one.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I wonder, I mean, yeah, Maya's gonna comment on it, and I wonder how that would go in the opposite direction in other cases. I understand the intention of what we're trying to do here. I wonder what the converse is to that, because interestingly enough, I did have a fair share discussion the other day at County Council, giving them the update on this in a similar kind of thought process, and a question or a comment did come up that, oh, we can charge whatever we want on the other side of it. So
No.
that's just something to consider there. But yeah, I'm fine with that language in general. I'd love to hear what Maya has to say.
Go ahead, Maya.
Thank you. Commissioner Carr-Smith, are you suggesting deleting all of the dollar amounts? Because it also says as follows. So would you keep the as follows?
I did cross it out, but yet that's up to you guys whether that should stay in there or not. I can't make that call.
It's where
Or
it's.
I would-
like I should.
It could potentially be, you know, a indication that if the council determines the fair share contributions are appropriate, the amount would be as followed. Or
So-
deleting it,
so-
and just saying, you know, as saying it as Commissioner Carr-Smith stated it, and let them figure it out.
But I know that the department has policies that they follow inserting this, so I don't want to be controlling that.
Yeah, so I'm just asking for clarity of whether you're keeping the dollar amounts or adding Nancy's language and saying or as follows, so that it gives them an either or.
Okay, how about instead of putting it before the as follows, we put it after, and it says in lieu of, where it says in lieu of paying for the fair share contribution, applicant may construct. At that point, we could say that the total dollar amount will be determined by the county council and could be less considering the merits of the application. Would that suffice? Okay, well, let's add that language to the right immediately after the dollar values. Question of the applicants, would you guys be okay with including that language?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, are there any other questions on this application?
Any clarification, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Are you folks going to make that as an amendment and first and second and vote on it?
It would, our corporation counsel has advised us to make one motion at the end of the item in which we incorporate all of the recommended revisions.
Perfect.
And
Mahalo.
am I correct on that, Malia?
Yes, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeFranco.
I just want to be clear, Commissioner Bentusic, when you change that language like that, would it allow the county council to increase? I mean, it's allowing them to decrease. Would it allow them to increase it?
Our
I
language.
just want to make sure that it doesn't do that.
So, I mean, we don't have any control over that. I mean,
Okay.
that's outside of our control. What we are proposing, the language that Nancy stated, or Commissioner Carr-Smith stated, was that the fair share contribution could be less.
Okay.
She's not saying it could be reevaluated. She's saying it could be less when
Okay.
considering the merits of the individual application.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Carr-Smith.
I'm sorry, but I would prefer it up above the numbers. And then end it as Maya suggested or as follows.
Or as follows. Okay.
Yeah, it just makes more sense than messing with that sentence after.
Okay. I'm good with any of those. I think it captures the intent of all of it. With that, can we have a motion? Commissioner Carr-Smith?
I move that a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council on the application to amend change of zone ordinance number 04-149 based on the planning director's recommendation with the following amendment. Condition L, the last sentence shall be amended. The fair share contribution shall be as follows is crossed out, and added is as county council deems reasonable, which may be less when considering the merits of the application, comma, or as follows, which shall be adopted.
Motion made. Commissioner DeFranco?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Carr-Smith, second by Commissioner Franco. Any discussion, commissioners? Maya, see that cool little hand again.
Commissioner Carr-Smith, can you clarify, does that include the director's revised recommendation and condition related to the highway access?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay,
It's
seeing
part of
no
the
discussion,
recommendation, right? So, yeah.
seeing no discussion, proceed with roll call.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Chair. And with that, we'll take a roll call. The motion on the floor is to approve the recommendation by the planning director, which does include the revised recommendation, as well as the amendments made to condition L. With that, Chair Carr-Smith, Commissioner Carr-Smith, sorry. Commissioner DeFranco,
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Pernis,
It's on
I'm
mute,
sorry.
Commissioner.
Because of the danger of the amendment about the money, I must vote no.
Commissioner Yates is absent or excused. Vice Chair Newberg
Aye.
and Chair Batusek.
Aye.
The motion carries 5-1 with one excused. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to the applicants, to the young Ohana. Oh, go ahead, Director.
Thank you. I was going to say conflict on the next one. I'm going to bounce off until you guys are completely done, and I'll be back on to handle any administrative matters on the other side. And wanted to give a shout out to Tracy for a great presentation. Excellent job. Thank you all. And I'll see you after. Bye.
Okay, take care. Getting back in to the applicant, you guys will be notified of the commission's decision in writing. And
Okay.
then you'll proceed on with the next step of going to the county council. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have the applicant, the Arthur Arjan Trust for use permit 21. Okay, hold on. Maya's got a question.
Okay.
Maya, you're on mute.
I said, I'm sorry that I tried to mute Liz and I muted you instead. So
Oh, okay.
I think we're ready now. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so you guys can, okay, one more thing, go ahead, from the applicant. You had a question? You're on mute also.
Oh.
Oh.
I think they unmuted us.
There you go.
I
You're
just
good.
had a quick question before we left. With the
Go ahead.
revisement of having the access blocked from Mamaloa Highway, is there a description on how to block that? Would that be given to us, or is that just like?
We're just making sure we would know exactly what to do on that matter.
Maya, go ahead.
Yes, hi. So we can reach out to you after the meeting and
Okay.
give you the contacts of the Department of Transportation, and you can work with them on how best to block that access.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. And then, so we did vote on the time extension, right? I know we were talking about the fair share.
Yeah, we're talking about a lot of other stuff too.
So,
Yes. Yep. You will. We voted on the time extension. That
Okay.
was
perfect.
a positive recommendation, and that's going to the county council. And then, so my understanding on the access is that that's tied to the subdivision and to the rezoning ordinance. So while you're still on Ag 5 lot, you're not Ag 5 anymore, but basically that would kick in upon completion of the subdivision. Is that right?
Okay.
The access?
Yeah, the
Okay.
requirement is that the access be removed prior to final subdivision approval.
Okay,
So you use it until you're ready to do the final subdivision approval.
perfect.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Are we able to get off the call now, or?
Yes, you are. Please do.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care. Okay, moving on. The item number 2, new business applicant is the Arthur Arijan. Am I saying that right? Arthur, I see you're on. Would you correct me?
Yeah, it's Arigian.
Arigian. Arigian. Thank you. Arthur Arigian Trust. That's application for a use permit to operate a 4-bedroom bed and breakfast in an existing residence situated on a 14,530 square foot lot within the state land use urban district. Subject property is located at 78-6626 Ali'i Drive, approximately 0.5 miles south of La'aloa Road, intersection Kahalu Beach Lots, North Kona, Hawaii, TMK 378-14076. Our staff presentation will be by Alex Roy. Alex, are you ready for the presentation?
I am.
Okay, take it away.
All right. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Batusek. I am before you today to present for your consideration the Arthur H. Arigian Trust Use Permit Application number 21-85. The applicant is requesting to operate a 4-room bed and breakfast in the existing residence on the subject property. The home currently consists of 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms, so one of which will be used for a full-time on-site caretaker. The full-time caretaker will reside on-site in the room at the south end of the house on the lower level. The proposed bed and breakfast will provide overnight accommodations to a maximum of 10 guests in the 4 bedrooms, of course, for a period of less than 30 days. Breakfast may be provided to registered guests only. No other meals will be provided. Paved parking will include a 3-car garage and 2 paved parking spaces located on the property for a total of 5 parking spots. The applicant has also noted that no exterior signage is proposed for this bed and breakfast. Here's a location map. I've got it marked in red, the address there, 78-6626 Ali'i Drive, between Magic Sands Beach Park and Kahalu'u Beach Park to the south of the project site. Here's the county zoning, outlined in light blue here in the middle is the subject site within the RS 7.5, so residential, single family residential, 7,500 square feet. You could see across Ali'i Drive, pardon the offline GIS, but across the street you see the same RS zoning, and then it moves into multifamily residential. South of the project site, we see the Kahalu'u urban, this is the resort node, resort zoning, so it's about 500 or so feet. And then there's some 5A agricultural parcel up along. So the road going along here is, of course, Leeward Drive. The state land use boundary map shows the entire area as within the urban district with a small portion of ag. That was that A5A zone district over there. The general plan or LUPEG map shows the property is between open and low density urban. The open, just to remind the commissioners, the open zoning typically is aligned with the shoreline setback area. So the LDU, the deputy director had accepted the LDU as acceptable low density urban. And then of course the resort node to the south is medium density urban. Here's an aerial photograph of the existing structure. You can see it's it's a couple stories right along the shoreline and is existing use as a single family residence. Leeward Drive, of course, running through, and you can see a number of residential structures dotted throughout. Rocky coastline with some beach fronting Mackay of the subject parcel. Here's a site plan. Now the commissioners did receive in their background recommendation all of the site plans. I just put a couple up for reference. One here kind of shows the property, and I put this up for two reasons. One, to kind of show you the distance from the shoreline and the structure and how it's laid out on the property. But there's a couple, the trees here along Leeward Drive are actually within the right of way, and DPW has requested and went in as a condition of this recommendation that these be removed. So that's per DPW has asked that these trees be removed. Now the applicant is removing a coconut palm here that is actually encroaching onto the neighbor's roof. So they're going to be taking that out. I added this in just to kind of show the parking spots. So it's existing and then proposed on the top. Here's the additional parking spots that are going to be added to, and then the 3-car garage, kind of outlining that there's not a lot of changes. A lot of the changes are interior. And again, for the commissioners, note that an SMA assessment has already been approved by the planning department to do those interior changes in preparation for this change of use. I placed this as proposed on top, existing on the bottom, just to show you that the changes from the ocean looking towards the property. So this is from the ocean looking Malka. So you see there's very little change to the structure itself. Here's a view of the property looking south along Leeward Drive. The structure itself on the right. And then you note right next to our little county vehicle, the palm trees that are to be removed out of the county DPW's right away. I didn't capture the tree that's going to be removed, but it's right over here on the right-hand side. Also for your consideration, just to provide the information, there's a public shoreline access adjacent to the property. Now it is not on the property, but it is between this property and the one to the south. You can see in the picture on the left, we have the shoreline signage, very clear. And then I took a shot of the actual access, which is clear and open and was easily to, get down to the shoreline. So that parking is unclear how people park here, but there were no parking signs. But the access is full and accessible, fully open and accessible, and the applicants will work to keep their vegetation out of that. So at this time, the planning department's deputy director's recommendation is to approve this use permit with the conditions as stated. And I'll be happy to take any questions from the commissioners.
Okay, before we get into questions, I do want to mention that on February 25th, we received an incomplete petition for standing in a contested case hearing from Mr. Mark, I believe, Roshin. This application was incomplete in that the appropriate filing fee was not attached to the contested case application, and it was not notarized as is required to be considered for standing in a contested case hearing. The person who filled out that application is not here to present today. Therefore, his comments can't be considered to be distinguishable from that of the general public. Therefore, we would have to consider his application as we would consider any other public testimony, and not consider it in the light of a contested case. With that, can we make a motion to deny the standing for contested case hearing based on the incomplete application?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Carr Smith. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Second by Commissioner Kealoha. Now we're going to miss you guys. Any discussion? Commissioner DeFranco, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question about the septic tank and the cesspool.
Oh,
Right.
specifically, any questions specifically on the contested case on the?
Sorry.
that's on the
Okay,
table?
no, I don't have
Nope.
this. I'm good with that.
Commissioner Van Pernis.
Did the department consider the matters referred to in the did the department consider the matter raised in the application, although the application is only going to be considered as public testimony?
Go ahead, Alex.
We did. I actually tried to contact the petitioner by letter and by phone and got no response. We addressed the comment, and as you can see, it is one comment: do not cut the coconut trees. And as I explained in my presentation, that is actually not our requirement. That's a requirement being put forth by DPW.
Okay, so again, not discussing the specific merits, but his testimony would then be considered as public testimony, not as contested case testimony. So with that, is there any further questions on the motion on the floor? Okay, let's vote on that. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? No opposition. Okay. With that, we can proceed on with questions of staff on the specifics of their presentation. Commissioner Van Pernis.
Was any prohibition or barrier to parking on Lee Drive considered? And I raise this because I'm familiar with this property, it's the old Bienenfeld property, and it butts almost right up to Lee Drive, and it's natural that people will want to park on Lee Drive, and I don't see why the county should provide parking for this commercial activity.
Well, we're not providing parking for, in fact, as I thought was clear, the area Malka of the structure and the parcel in question is actually under the authority of DPW, and the planning department doesn't have any provisions to allow for parking in the right of way. You would have to take that up with Public Works. We have noted that there's 5 parking spots being provided for this use, and those will all be on the subject parcel.
Basically. So that's basically a no. There is no consideration or requirement that the applicant address that issue.
Okay, Commissioner DeFranco.
Yeah,
Or I'm
thank you.
sorry, I'm not still getting used to the little hand thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh.
Is there a response to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the planning department did consider the parking situation. And in the zoning code, it states that all uses need to provide their own on-site parking. And so in this case, the applicant is providing the minimum required parking in the zoning code. And so with that, if that section of Ali Drive, if our county traffic division has allowed on-street parking, then it's allowed for anybody. If traffic has restricted on-street parking in this area, then it would not allow for on-street parking. So the applicant is providing all required parking on site, and the planning department did consider that.
Okay, Commissioner DeFranco.
I just wanted to bring up that, you know, in the wastewater portion number 20, it talks about a permitted cesspool from 1987. And wondering what the requirements is for cesspools and septic tanks now. I mean, is this being considered in this approval?
Well, the Department of Health is the one responsible for regulating the septic systems. And so there's no provision for the planning department to force an applicant to remove a septic tank, cesspool, and replace it. I believe that there's something coming from the state that's moving towards that in the future, but the planning department doesn't really have that authority.
Well, what
No, go ahead, Mike. Nope.
What about as a condition of approval for the bed and breakfast use?
Yeah, I'm not clear on what we could require the applicant to do outside of DOH rules, state rules, and so maybe Maya or April could answer that question.
Sure. I mean, I definitely share that concern, given that, you know, a cesspool on an oceanfront lot is basically having a pipe of sewage into the ocean. I mean, the amount of time that's going to take for that sewage to reach the ocean is zero. And especially if you're adding 10 guests a day, we'd be having a pretty big effect. So I think that it's worth looking at, I mean, while they're in here doing their $150,000 renovation, whether now is the time to request that we convert from cesspool to septic, which will at least slow the leach of waste material into the ocean. Maya, I see the hand again.
Thanks, Mike. So the applicant may actually be able to respond to that question a little bit better, because they've probably talked to Department of Health to see whether they're going to require a conversion from cesspool to septic with the building permit that's in process for the interior renovations. Sometimes interior renovations don't trigger a conversion, and sometimes they do, and it's all up to Department of Health. So I think the applicant can better respond to that.
I understand there, but I think the question that we have is whether or not, as a condition of the issuance of a use permit, that the Planning Commission can include that as a condition.
You can.
Okay.
You have that authority.
Okay. Is there any questions from any other commissioners that haven't spoken yet? Commissioner Carr-Smith?
Yeah, that just led me to wonder, I think it's 2045 that cesspools are supposed to be replaced by septic systems. So is there anything in the county plans to begin to recommend replacement when use permits or any other kind of permits come up? Or is that not really on the radar right now? Just curious.
Yeah, Maya or April would have to answer that question.
Go ahead, Maya.
I think actually April, she's here acting on behalf of the director today. And since she's our manager of long-range planning, she has a better idea of the county's long-term plan for cesspool conversion.
Thank you all. April Supernaut with the Planning Department. Thanks for having me here today. Again, I think the county is following the guidance from State Department of Health. And so we are considering some things in the next round of the general plan, which would, we're not ready to reveal that or discuss all of that quite yet, but those are part of the considerations going into our long range plans as a whole. But for now, all we can go by is the direction and codes, laws, and rules as provided by the Department of Health. I would also add that the house was permitted as a 5-bedroom house. And so that is not being expanded or extended. So theoretically, a large family with guests could also occupy the same dwelling.
Commissioner Van Pernis.
Thank you. I note that the county's background report and recommendation talks about the 10 occupant B&B, while the State Department of Health refers to a requirement of a 6-person guest do not exceed 6, so 6 on caretaker duties. But how does the staff rectify the difference between the 10 referred to in the application and the 6 referred to by the State Department of Health? Should the county concede to the state 6 requirement? I'm talking about the March 4, 2021 memorandum of the Department of Health.
The 10 is the maximum number of guests allowed at a bed and breakfast. I'm not sure why the Department of Health only stated 6, but
do you know? I mean, they indicated in their letter that under the definition of bed and breakfast, the limit is 6. Do you know what definition they're quoting? They didn't quote any ordinance in that statement.
yeah, that was what's unclear to me, Chair, is, bed and breakfast establishment, is that DOH's definition, or, unfortunately, we got this only just a few days ago. DOH decided to wait till the 11th hour to send us comments. So I'm not sure why or what ordinance or where they came up with that definition. I can look into that though.
That would be great. I mean, I'm definitely sympathetic to the situation that DOH is undertaking at the moment. But that would be helpful, considering that Hawaii County Code 25-4-7 indicates a limit of 10 that's not to exceed for a bed and breakfast. So I also had the same question as Commissioner Van Pernis about the discrepancy. Commissioner Van Pernis.
I'd ask Mr. Roy if it's appropriate to, from his point of view, to defer this matter till the discrepancy between 10 and 6, which Mr. Roy states he doesn't know why that differential exists at this time. Would it be appropriate to defer until the matter is resolved, resulting in a possible different recommendation about limiting the B&B to 6?
I think you should discuss with the applicant if they would be willing to reduce that number. The application came in for 10. County code allows for 10. So to defer, I think, would rely on the applicant willingness to do so. I don't believe it's necessary.
Is something that our corporation counsel can weigh in on as to if they have any indication on whether the state has rules that establish a limit at 6 and where we fit with the discrepancy that's presented to us?
I would
Yeah.
have to do the research. I'm gonna defer to Maya if she knows the state rules.
Thanks, Malia. Yeah, so the definition that you see before you in their memo is actually from Hawaii Administrative Rules from the Department of Health's Food Safety Code. So the Department of Health has a different definition than we do in our zoning code for B&B. What this simply means is that these rules in their memo apply to their definition of a B&B. Since this 10-bedroom B&B does not fit DOH rules, any food service that they do is going to have to comply with whatever other DOH rules they have for food safety for establishments above 6 bedrooms. So I don't know that it necessitates deferring. I think it's just one of those cases where we have 2 different definitions. Regardless, the applicant will have to comply with DOH rules for food safety.
Chair Vatusik,
Yes, Commissioner Carr-Smith.
could we go ahead and hear the applicant's presentation so we can see where they stand on this?
Sure. Commissioner Van Pernis, is there anything else you want to add before we have the staff, applicant's presentation?
Yes, I'd like to have a question of Ms. Hall or of Ms. Jackson in response to what's been said. Is it correct, am I correct in saying that the state could take legal action to limit the guests to 6, while the county, depending on the ordinance, say 10, and then if the state prevails, the county would have liability to the applicant for the lost income of the additional 4?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Vatusik. I mean, Don Pernis, I'm gonna need you to repeat your question.
Okay, if the state through its action, legal action or otherwise, limits the B&B to 6 persons, while the county ordinance says 10 people, does the county end up with liability to the applicant for the additional 4 that were approved in violation of the state?
I would have to do research into the case law, but I'm gonna, off the top of my head, I'm gonna say no.
I just want to add, I think I got a little bit more information. You know, the nice thing about having these meetings online and having 2 computer screens is that I looked up the Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 50, and there is no definition of bed and breakfast in that administrative rule. What is stated about bed and breakfast is that an exemption to the food establishment permit is provided for a bed and breakfast that is under 6 guests. So therefore, if a bed and breakfast is over 6 guests, they have to get a food establishment permit from the state. So there's no limit on the number of guests imposed by the state's food service rules. It's simply a requirement that they then get a food service permit. So with that, I think we're addressed and we can move on that subject. The county does have authority to grant a permit for up to 10 guests. With that, we can bring in the applicant. Let me get back to my script. Hold on one second. Shoot. And that's the downside of having too many screens. Okay, we're good to go. So the applicants, could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth on this matter before the Leeward Planning Commission?
Yes,
I do.
do.
Please state your name and area of residence.
Arthur Region, live on Alei Drive in Kailua, Kona.
John Pippin, Land Planning Hawaii. I live outside of Honaka'a, Hamakua, Big Island. And Brian Lindsay is a project architect. I'm not sure if you want to introduce yourself. You're still on mute.
That would be great, Brian. Go ahead.
Yeah, Brian Lindsay, architect. I live in Captain Cook.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Region, have you received the background recommendation reports from the planning department?
Yes,
Do you agree with the planning director's recommendation, including the proposed conditions?
yes.
Okay, please go ahead with your presentation.
John Pippin, Land Planning Hawaii. I'll start off just for some background. It's been a rough year and a half almost now. The pandemic has had impacts on all aspects of daily life and business here in Hawaii. And the construction industry has been a little bit of a bright point, and looks like tourism is starting to get restarted. And throughout this downturn, the applicant, Mr. Ajian, has been pumping money, investing into this property, trying to improve its use, trying to contribute to Hawaii's economy through the increase in property taxes, GE and TAT taxes, maintenance and management, and all of the construction that's gone into it. So in evaluating these use permits, these are uses that are established within zoning code that should be allowed, given that there's no substantial adverse impacts and it's consistent with the county general plan and zoning code. We've seen in the recommendation that looks to be the case. There are a couple wrinkles that we've pointed out or have been pointed out in terms of the wastewater. We can discuss that further. And it looks like we've addressed already the DOH comment. So far, we intend to provide only non-potentially hazardous food items, which are exempt from DOH regulation and food establishment permitting. So these are things like pastries, commercial cereals, juice, coffee and tea, very basic, non-hazardous foods. That's the one thing. Glad we've got that settled. The cesspool is definitely a trickier question. I did a little bit more research, and this approximately half-mile stretch of Alii Drive has over 50 lots, most of those with dwellings, and the vast majority of those are on cesspool. The county wastewater system terminates about 1,200 feet to the north of Mr. Agent's property, and the private Kahalu system terminates about 1,200 feet to the south. As far as I know, there's no plans for extending either of those sewers in the near term to the subject property, but that would be the best solution. That would serve these 50 lots, that would provide for the highest level of treatment, and it would be the most cost effective. Not saying that it wouldn't be costly, but so that would be the preferred alternative, to have, yes, all of these cesspools converted, but by converting them to sewer use, that would be the best for the environment, the near shore water quality, et cetera, and so forth. So that would be our preference. And I think we'll find that the applicant, Mr. Reagan, is very reasonable and acceptable to reasonable conditions to be imposed on this. So with that, I'll turn it over and hope for just a very respectful discussion with lots of aloha and fair and impartial treatment. That's all we ask for. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, are there any questions from commissioners? Commissioner DeFranco.
So back to the waste management. So you've said that, you know, it's an existing cesspool, and granted the other people have cesspools, but the third opportunity is to do a septic system. Have you considered this?
Yes, and can I go ahead and respond?
Yes. Yep.
So the trick comes with the size and the layout of the parcel and the existing cesspool. If we bring up the site plan, or if you just recall the site plan, the parking is all on the Mauka side next to Ali'i Drive, tucked in the northern corner of the usable area of this parcel. The cesspool is there. It's 10 by 4 by 10 feet deep, concrete, reinforced, you know, all permitted, all up to spec at the time it was installed. So to design and actually install a septic system there is going to be a little tricky given the space constraints. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It may be possible. There's an additional wrinkle in that this is a shoreline parcel, and the certified shoreline that we've got on our site plans is from the mid-late 80s. Shorelines change. If we plan to put in a septic system, this is going to instigate another round of special management area permitting. They're going to the planning department is likely going to look at that certified shoreline from the 80s and request that it be updated. So a new shoreline, may it be closer to the dwelling, could put the backside of the dwelling within the 40-foot mandatory shoreline setback. So then we'd be in a position where state law prohibits us from putting in a septic system because it's too close to the shoreline. So what do we do in that situation? So we would have to A, prepare an environmental assessment, and B, seek a shoreline setback variance to put the cesspool or put the septic system in, or any improved wastewater treatment option. So it's not that we're averse to doing this. This is a good idea. It's just there are complicating factors, namely the shoreline setback.
How far down the road have you gone in that analysis? Have you priced it out? Have you done anything concrete in terms of figuring out what costs would be to get a cesspool update or septic upgrade?
So just generally, septic systems, run-of-the-mill, kind of easy to lay out, not any tricky situations, would be 10 to 15,000. This one, given that we've got space constraints, we may have to do something innovative or, you know, just unusual that is still within the DOH regulations, like a seepage pit. So turning the existing cesspool, pumping it out, cleaning it out, and using that as the disposal system for the effluent coming out of the septic system. That's an option. Maybe, I haven't spoken with an engineer about it. I'm not an engineer myself. There may be options. I just really not like to put the applicant in a tough situation in agreeing to a condition to upgrade the septic system, but then not being able to due to the shoreline.
Commissioner Kiloa.
Well, I'm wondering if this application doesn't put you in a position of a large capacity cesspool and require that transition anyway.
So we had water and wastewater calculations prepared by a licensed engineer, Island Engineering, and the expected water use and therefore water effluent from the property is under the Department of Health limits for, you know, cesspool septic systems. It's not a large capacity cesspool.
I'm thinking about use in the commercial capacity, if that doesn't change it to a large capacity and require those changes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this would kick it over in that respect. And again, we're not at all opposed to doing the septic upgrade. We think, that is a worthwhile avenue. But it's tricky because we may not be able to, just based on the shoreline setback, recent changes accessing the 205A. There is no more 20-foot shoreline setback, which this parcel originally was built within that framework. So this is coming up a lot, and you'll probably see a lot more projects where this little wrinkle gets exposed, where the parcel was built up with the 20-foot setback, but now the setback is 40 feet. So anything going forward and anything not fully permitted, which this place is fully permitted, would have to adhere to that 40-foot setback.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe this is a question that'd be better suited to the architect on design for a cesspool and how we would accomplish that. Brian, would you mind giving us your perspective on that?
Again, a bit out of my expertise, but going back to John's comments, there is no area obviously on the ocean side for installing anything. I do know, a full septic system also has a 5-foot setback from property lines. So looking on the Leeward Drive side, again, there's no not much room to put it. I would have to talk with my civil engineer to see if it could be done, but the feasibility doesn't look great.
And then maybe someone from the county could address the statement about the not being able to do it per different codes and regulations, because it seems to me like putting in a septic system would be a pretty big benefit for the environment, and we should probably look at all avenues possible to make that happen. Is there any restrictions from regulatory perspective that would prevent them from converting?
There's the 40-foot setback. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and put up this plan here. I think that will help us be able to discuss this a little better. So right now you can see that the Canada Leeward lanai is 20 foot. So that's a 20-foot setback from the 1985 certified shoreline. As John mentioned, most likely the shoreline will have migrated Malka. So that means that they're going to have to implement a 40-foot setback, which would bring us somewhere within, probably just underneath the house structure, possibly even further. The limitations with a conversion from a septic cesspool to more of a drain field structure, there seems to be some confusion that by getting rid of the septic tank and putting in a new drain field system would somehow alleviate material going into the water. That's not the case. It still would be leaching in, it'd just be leaching in a much broader area. The hope, and there has been some discussions that I've seen, would be to carry sewer down a Leeward Drive possibly and attach these structures, which to me would be the best environmentally sensitive way to deal with the septic issues that are not only facing Leeward Drive, but it's happening across the state. Every island is facing this issue with material from septic tanks. Kauai is dealing with an old landfill that's now being exposed at the shoreline. So this is an issue for sure, but a broader, more comprehensive system, I think, would be effective. To put the burden on the applicant when they have very little room, I think may lead to future problems that would take a lot more engineering to resolve. But as this shows, there's just not the space to do something. If they were to put it, have to deconstruct the house to place a septic tank underneath it, you know, the impacts alone from that process could be more detrimental. But again, this is a statewide problem that is being faced, but it appears to me to be looked at from a more comprehensive fix, a system-wide fix. So.
Is there any system-wide fix in the works now that the applicant could contribute to?
It doesn't appear. I wasn't able to find anything clear and concrete, only, you know, limited discussions over time about producing. You know, you have the resort node that's 500 feet south of this property. I'm not sure where the septic lines, the sewer lines are. And unfortunately, Lee Drive is at a low point. So any septic would have to require pumping stations, things like that. So it's an extremely big problem. So I just am concerned putting that burden on one applicant to really kind of, you know, resolve that issue, when this might be better suited for a more comprehensive solution from the departments within the county.
Oh, I mean, of course, it would be better suited to have the county take care of it. You know, it's concerning the fact that there doesn't appear to be any progress in that direction for something that's so important for the environment. And, you know, we'll be faced by a number of these situations where here we have an applicant trying to do something that will increase the effect, environmental effect. And it'll be a perfect opportunity for us to require them to make a contribution to like a sewer district or something like that in order for the regional problem to be solved. You know, it's tough that we don't have that ability because of the lack of planning on the county side.
Yeah, I'm not sure of any provision that would, but of course, you know, as the planning commission, you have that right to move that forward.
Right. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
So if I understand correctly, you're pretty much banking on the possibility of connecting to one of the two sewers, either north or south, at some point in the future. Is that correct, John?
Thank you, Commissioner Carr-Smith. Not necessarily. Like I said, we're not at all opposed to implementing and converting to a septic system. The trick is not having complete knowledge of where the certified shoreline would lie right now may make that incredibly difficult, if at all possible. So the condition could be written such that if sufficient space after a certified shoreline survey is conducted is available on the property to accommodate a septic system, then it would be installed, and give a time frame for that, something along those lines. I think those would be acceptable terms. We don't, yeah, obviously a sewer system is ideal, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of homes along this stretch of Lee Drive that have no improved wastewater treatment at this point. And many of those homes are $1 million homes. So it makes sense for the environment, for the county, maybe to have a improvement district, a contribution from each owner. I don't know, these things are probably beyond the scope of this permit as it is, but I think there could be some condition that should a improvement district be established, the applicant, Mr. Rajan, would contribute to that his fair share to extend the sewer to his property. That's what.
Just had one more question, please. Have you guys considered using the pool area if you need to?
Like I said, we haven't spoken to an engineer, and this is going to be a much bigger impact on the special management area. Decommissioning the cesspool, digging up the driveway and the parking area. I think we would have to rely on Mr. Rajan to see if he were amenable to losing the pool. I don't know, that's a pretty big ask. but we can defer to him.
Thank you.
Commissioner Van Furnace.
I have a couple questions that I want to preface with the following. First, this is the Obenenfeld house that had 2 residents. Now they're going to as many as 10. And I think the sewage has to be addressed. Secondly, the question is, out of that 50-some property that the architect refers to, how many are B&Bs with 10 people coming in? Not very many, if any. Third, I believe from my experience being at the property that the houses are on stilts or poles so that the construction could go underneath if they need pits or other situations for sewage. And thirdly, I think the expense is justified in that this oceanfront B&B is going to be making $20,000 or $30,000 a month. Is there any response?
Yes, I think the question as to how many of the properties around this one are used for STVR use would be better directed to the planning department, and maybe they can chime in on that. Based on my informal research from online listings, it looks like a fair number of them, maybe 10 or so, are used in a similar way for short-term vacation rental use. And again, many of these houses are large and expensive, right along the shoreline. As for using the under house space, I think that is kind of moving in the wrong direction with respect to the shoreline as it gets you closer to the water. We want to keep all the wastewater treatment on the Malka side as close to Aliki Drive as is practical. And I think the technical difficulties of doing any work like that underneath the house make it a little impractical. Did I answer your question?
Okay, we've had a pretty good discussion on this. Is there a motion that someone would like to make? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Lindsay.
Just one point on the potential construction of a septic system. The DOH does not allow septic systems under a house. They require 5 feet from a wall line and 5 feet from a property line. So you're basically looking at best case scenario, a 5-foot sliver, between the house and the property line, just as a practicality.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Furnace?
Variances are allowed for such matters. Thank you.
For me, in kind of trying to digest what's going on, obviously the best solution for the wastewater would be connection to sewer. I like the concept of including language about contribution to a sewer district in the event that one is formed. Because that would be the best solution. Even including a septic would be a temporary Band-Aid that could be an added cost if an actual sewer was to come into the area. Again, I ask anybody if you'd like to make a motion now that we've had a pretty good question and answer session with the applicant. And then we can continue our discussion after a motion has been made. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
Sure. Thank you. Wait, sorry, hold on. I move that the application for use permit number 21-000085 be approved based on the planning director's recommendation, which shall be adopted.
Would it, oh, can we have a second?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you. For discussion purposes, would you be amenable to including the proposed language by Mr. Pippin about a possible contribution to a sewer district in the event that one is formed, a fair share contribution to a sewer district?
I understand that concept, and what I understood John to say was discussion, and I might have missed something. He talked about an improvement district where all property owners in the area would contribute. I have a little bit of issue putting onus on this specific property owner and not the others.
It would, yes, exactly. My understanding was that they would be contributing to a broader improvement district. They wouldn't be responsible for funding all of it. They would be putting their fair share contribution towards the larger project that would possibly be funded by all other entities as well.
So my understanding for how these things work is it would be mandatory to connect anyway. They'd be charged to connect to the system, your fair share, if it's similar to what happened, island wide.
So if it comes to their area, Perry, you're saying they wouldn't have a choice, they would have to connect. I guess maybe the concept is if there's an improvement district that's perhaps being more proactive and not waiting for them to come, but forcing the issue in a quicker way. But I don't know that we're the body to create that.
We're not the body to create it, but we can say if one is created, that they will help to pay their fair share for it. And perhaps someone from the county could give us a little more background on whether that's appropriate and what they would recommend. Anyone from the county?
I could say the language would be something along the lines of the applicant will contribute to a sewer district and sewer upgrades in the vicinity of the property if and when one such sewer district is formed. Maybe something along those lines.
Yeah, we would just add the fair share, so they're not contributing everything. They're contributing their fair share. But I like that language. Maya, does that sound good to you?
I have no opinion on this one.
Okay. Commissioner DeFranco?
Yes, I'm just agreeing a little bit with Perry. I'm not sure why we need the language, because when they finally do this, maybe 20 years from now, they're going to mandate all the people there to pay for it. I mean, that they will create that. And why would we put the language in there if we already know they're going to, when they create it, that's what they're going to require. I'm not sure why. I mean, I would be more interested, let me just finish my thought, in that I didn't really feel like they explored totally the septic thing, the idea of conversion to a septic system. I know it isn't the answer, and I know it still has the runoff into the ocean, but I think it does treat it and slow it down and a little bit. And I know we're faced, I don't want to put the onus on one property owner, but it's hard to allow it just to keep happening like this and going right into the ocean. So I like that they were willing to look a little bit further to see if a septic system is even possible to be done, to upgrade it a bit and to make an effort to do that, because it's going to be 20 years before Lee Drive gets dug up, unless the county has plans to do it sooner than that. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I definitely understand where you guys are coming from, and for us not having any experience with a sewer district or anything like that, I feel like the idea behind it is that it facilitates the construction of the sewer in advance of the connection fees. So the payments to a sewer district would be in advance, and so that, hey, we're going to form this sewer district, we're going to collect fees that would go towards the construction of the sewer, and then at that point, once it's constructed, there could be a connection fee as well. This is to allow for the upfront cost of the construction of the sewer rather than after the fact, a connection fee. I agree with your discussion about the septic conversion to from cesspool to septic, and possibly including language about the assessment of the feasibility of that connection during the permit. Because I feel like the time to do it would be the time during the renovations and remodel. Is there language that you would propose to be amended to the motion on the floor?
I just think that, let's see, to amend it to include the exploration of the possibility of having a septic system upgrade. I mean, we can't really rule that out until they've looked a little bit further into it.
As the, Mike?
Yes.
As the maker of the motion, I felt, I guess, Barbara, I felt that they have looked into it. I was pretty satisfied with John's discussion about the options that they have. And it's my opinion is that they're going to have to deal with that regardless when the time comes, because everybody is, but it's down the road. Maybe there's some other options. It seems that there's nothing that the county is requiring right now in terms of, something that triggers the upgrade sooner than what the state has proposed. So personally, I don't think that there's a need to require that. But Perry, what do you think?
Can I
respond?
respond?
Sorry.
I agree. Oh, go ahead, Perry.
One second. Go ahead, Perry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say, this is my last meeting, and it's kind of ironic that I'm jumping here technically, but I have a strong suspicion that the change in use will trigger a large capacity and will require that change sooner than you think.
Mm.
Okay, Commissioner DeFranco.
Yeah, I agree with you, Nancy, on what you said, and I'm glad to know what you're saying too, Perry, because I think it may get changed on its own and trigger something. So you're right. There's no telling when this will move any direction, but thank you.
Commissioner Van Pertis.
Unlike the other lot owners or property owners in the area, we're being asked to enable this applicant to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And I think it's the commission's job to be proactive in suggesting or encouraging the kind of improvements that are necessary. I disagree with Ms. Carr-Smith in that we should do nothing and just hope that other entities will initiate the necessary changes. I think that we should make that suggestion and encourage them rather than stand silent as if we don't care. I think we should express that we do care, as Mrs. Vertusik has enunciated. And I think that encouraging a septic system and special improvement district or other situation for the area is a good thing. Not that we should do it because we don't have the authority, but we should encourage it rather than sit back and do nothing, as Mrs. Carr-Smith and Mr. Kellogg suggest.
Okay, I'm not sure that that's exactly what either of them are suggesting. I see that John had his hand raised. Is there something that you'd like to respond?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate, it's not the position of the applicant that they don't want to do anything. They're perfectly okay with the condition that would require a septic conversion, as long as it turns out that that's actually technically feasible, given that the shoreline setback has changed and the limited space available on the property for that improvement. So I'd just like to, if this is still unsettled, we'd like to entertain a motion to defer it to another meeting, get some more input from a civil engineer on this. But I think perhaps the motion could be crafted in such a way that if there is sufficient space on the property for a septic system, then it will be implemented within 5 years. That's a reasonable ask. But we have to really keep in mind that that shoreline setback has changed, and it really makes our commitment to improving to a septic system much more tricky.
So proposed language could be applicant will convert the existing cesspool to a septic system within 5 years if determined feasible by the constraints of the lot, of the individual lot. Would that be appropriate?
That's basically what I was getting at, yes.
Mr. Arigian, do you agree with that? You're on mute.
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay. Commissioner Carr-Smith, would you be okay with including that in the motion that you made?
I wouldn't have thought so, but since the applicant is suggesting it, sure.
Sure, okay. And then as with the applicant's initial suggestion, do we maintain the language that was suggested by John about the contribution to a sewer district in the event that one is formed to cover this individual property? Are you guys still okay with that, John?
I believe that would serve as a good plan B should there not be sufficient room given the shoreline setback and the property constraints to then input into the capital or the improvement district. So yes, I believe that would be okay.
Yeah, I see it not as a plan A and B, but as a short-term plan and a long-term plan.
Right.
Where in short term, we're trying to do what we can to put a Band-Aid on the sewage outfall. And then by converting from septic or converting from cesspool to septic, if possible. And then long term, you guys will contribute to the sewer district if and when one is formed to serve that lot. I mean, that seems like a fairly reasonable short-term solution and a long-term solution if feasible.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Okay, with the applicant in agreement, Commissioner Carr-Smith, would you be willing to amend the motion to reflect those changes?
Can we hear what Mr. Lindsay might have to add?
Of course, Mr. Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the feasibility of the septic system. So, we hire the civil engineer to do this feasibility. So we're looking within the, obviously within the setbacks, but are we also assuming existing construction remains? All the existing permanent construction?
I think that would be fair to assume that the existing construction that we're not going to ask them to tear down their home, a portion of their home in order to accommodate the conversion. I think that would be fair to say that the feasibility to include the usable area outside of the space of the existing home and improvements. But proceeding with any possible variances for minimizing the setback to allow for this environmentally friendly conversion.
Thank you.
Okay.
So as far as amending the motion, Mike, could I ask you to take a moment and create what that would read like, please?
Okay, for sure. And then, Alex, if you still have the language that you suggested for the second part of that, I really like the way that you stated that.
Yeah, Chair, I can give mine, and then you can beef it up if you'd like.
Sure.
Just so we can get it on the record too.
Yep.
So the applicant will make fair share contributions to an applicable sewer district if and when one is formed near and adjacent to the project site. And I think prior to the implementation of a sewer district, the applicant will work to determine the feasibility of converting the existing septic or cesspool to an appropriate septic system prior to, that's the only one I'm not sure. When do you want this done?
The applicant suggested within 5 years.
Okay.
That they'll make the effort to convert from cesspool to septic within 5 years, if feasible.
If determined feasible within the space provided, right? As Brian and John had, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have something along that lines. So the applicant will make fair share contributions to an appropriate sewer district if and when one is formed adjacent to the property or that contains the property. We can change that language.
And maybe even indicating serving the property.
Yeah, serving the property.
Yep.
In the interim, the applicant will work to determine the feasibility to convert the cesspool to an appropriate upgraded septic system within the space provided, all within 5 years of final approval of this use permit.
The one change I would have in that second one is I would say the applicant will convert the cesspool to a septic within 5 years, and then if feasible, given the constraints of the lot and the existing structures.
Okay. Yeah, we'll say shall.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Alex, I'm a stickler for words, so one more time, please.
Okay. Pardon me while I make sure.
Yep.
The applicant will contribute, will make a fair share contribution to an applicable sewer district if and when one is formed that serves the property. The applicant shall convert the existing cesspool to an appropriate septic system within 5 years of the approval of this use, if determined feasible and is available within the space provided by the parcel's dimensions or setbacks. I'm not sure how you want to say that.
Let's go with, I think that if determined feasible, considering the limitations of the lot and its existing structures.
Okay. Is that good, Commissioner Carsmith?
I think so. Did the applicant have something to say about that? John?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Just so long as we keep in mind that the limitations of the property would include the shoreline setback.
Yes, definitely. And of course, this would all require SMA review and approval. Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Carsmith, can you confirm that this language can be added to the existing motion?
Yes, so the language as outlined by Alex will amend the motion that I made. I think it was, he spoke slowly enough and clear enough that I think Noriko can get that.
Okay, and I'm sure, Alex, you have it written down, right?
I do have it written down, but I was speaking slowly for Noriko.
We're doubly covered, I think.
Yeah.
Terry, are you good with the motion?
Do you still second the motion? Okay, nodded in affirmation. With that, let's go to roll call.
Okay. Moved. Commissioner Carr Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Kealoha,
Aye.
Commissioner DeFranco,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Pernis,
Aye. Aye.
Vice Chair Newberg,
Aye.
and Chair Batusek.
Aye.
Commissioner Yates is excused. Motion carries 6-1.
Okay. Thank you to the applicants. You will be notified of this decision in writing. Any
Thank you very
final
much.
comments?
Thank you.
I appreciate your time and your hard work. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You guys can drop off the meeting. Aloha.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Alex, do we
Yes.
usually say, you said 6-1?
Oh, did I count that wrong?
It was
Oh, I'm
unanimous.
sorry. Yeah, well, the excused. I'm sorry.
Just
Yeah,
wanted
so
to clarify.
six with one excused.
Thank you.
6 votes aye with 1 excuse.
Good catch. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Next order will be to approve the minutes from February 18th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Kealoha, second by Commissioner Newberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving on to administrative matters, discussion of recent SMA determination, minor permits, enforcement action issued by the planning director.
Chair Vatusek, I'll take care of that one. So you should have gotten our SMA logs about 2 weeks ago. Those were for all of the SMA assessments and short form decisions that the department made on behalf of the Planning Commission. And I can answer any questions that you may have on that. Seeing none. I also want to bring to your attention that the State Office of Planning is going to be offering training to the Planning Commission in May. We tentatively have it scheduled for your May PC meeting. And so they're going to give a presentation, and we thought it would be helpful afterwards for staff to give a presentation of how that applies to our island, and then open it up to like a Q&A session for the commissioners. We also sent the Hawaii sea level rise vulnerability and adaptation report to the commission. Page 58 of that report talks about seawalls and how they are affected and affect coastal processes and erosion. So that might be helpful to take a look at before the training, and we can answer any questions you have related to that. That's all I have for item 1.
Commissioner Van Pernis.
Yes, I believe this is an administrative matter, although it could be brought up for new business too, but as an administrative matter, I'd like to ask Mr. Kern if it's still his position that any conflict of interest or appearance of impropriety with his prior private practice still applies to his actions as or recusal as planning director.
This is not an agendized item for discussion at this time. So we will proceed with the items as agendized. Are there any discussions relating to the information presented by Maya right now? Commissioner DeFranco.
I just wanted to thank you for forwarding the information on seawalls. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, we will move on to item 2 of administrative matters, discussion on amending the county code or permit conditions to add a clause to allow for consideration of the passage of time and change in conditions when considering whether a permit should be extended.
Yes, Chair Vitusik. So Commissioner Van Pernis had suggested some language that could be considered as a condition that the commission adds to its favorable recommendations for rezone to the council. And we distributed that to all of the commissioners. One thing I just want to remind everybody that the commission makes a recommendation to the council, not a decision. So anything you decide here, you can forward up to them as a suggestion and recommendation, and then we see where it goes from there.
Unless, of course, we are reviewing a special use permit, a special management area permit, in which case we are the issuing body. So we are the party who issues the conditions. So for a change of zone, yes, we're a recommending body, but we are the ones who are actually issuing the SMA permits. So we're the ones that can impart those conditions. And I want to make sure that we all know that we have the authority in those situations to provide language indicating that should circumstances change in the future, we can reevaluate our issuance of a discretionary permit.
That is correct. And I just framed it that way, Mike, because Commissioner Van Pernis's suggested language was geared more towards rezones. But you absolutely do have authority to put conditions in and time limits on use permits, special permits, SMA permits, shoreline setback variances.
Okay, Commissioner Van Pernis, would you take us through your suggestion? You're on mute. Commissioner, oh, there you go.
First, I want to point out that the biggest reason for problems and argument in the county council and in this commission is because of the delays that people seek and without any additional conditions. And I want to point out that I have discussed this matter with members of the county council, and they uniformly ask, why isn't such a condition as I've presented? Why isn't that made part of our recommendations? They are generally in favor of this, so that they don't have to negotiate. And I would point out that numerous applications, for instance, the past application of TWA Development LLC and Suffolk Development LLC involved delays and expired ordinances of over 25 years. And
hold on,
although we
Commissioner Van Pernis, we can't speak directly about any specific projects, but you can speak in the hypothetical about projects that you're trying
the
to.
Young's app.
that we're talking a discussion about changing conditions, and that's okay.
All right.
But we don't want to relate
Many
that to projects
applications.
for, hold on one second,
I'll
just for
just-
sunshine law purposes. Go ahead.
Many applications, including ones considered today, have expired, and people think they can get extensions despite expired applications without having to present or argue any future conditions. This is a major problem and the biggest controversy that has arisen. The language I propose deals with that and leaves open the matter of how long an ordinance should be able to survive without new conditions being considered. It doesn't mean that there have to be new conditions imposed, but they certainly need to be considered. There is decades often go by without any sort of contribution added when changes are very significant and need to be added. All of the expenses end up with the taxpayer rather than the developer who is benefiting. And I also would point out that many applications involve getting an approval with certain conditions and then selling the property with those conditions, knowing that the conditions will never be changed or added to. And that's a promise I can make to the buyer. So in order to deal with this, not just discuss it, but deal with this, we have to have such a condition as this and take the county council away from having to negotiate conditions also, such as some that have received negative recommendation from us. So this is good land planning. It's what most other progressive areas have, and it fills in a blank that our planning department leaves being the meaningless provision that a project be completed by a specific date and allowing them to get year after year after year of extension without any price. I think we need to make this a condition. This is something I have or close to what I've submitted.
Sorry, Director Kern, go ahead. I see you've had your little hand up there the whole time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I'd just like to add a little bit to this discussion. This is more of a discussion related to rezonings as far as special permits and SMAs. The SMA side of it's a little bit different, but related to special permits, when an application comes in for, let's say, a time extension, it might be a shorter application form than the normal submittal. However, that gets sent out to all the agencies, and all the conditions and all the impacts are looked at fresh based on when this came in. So it's sounding like it's assumed that because they're only asking for a time extension to an existing ordinance, that everything basically just stays the same. And if the conditions haven't changed, that would be true. But in some certain cases, that's not the case. Traffic has changed. They need to do an updated TAR. They need to do maybe updated archaeology. As well as we see fair share increase with that as well. So one of the interesting points I'd like to make with this is a property that was, say, rezoned in the past and has expired. Let's say it was rezoned to from like ag to residential or to commercial. The property tax rates changed and they're being charged at that new designation. So they're paying a higher property tax based on that land use. And so at what point do we stop that as well, right? Because we're collecting that revenue that we do need for our county based on that. And if we stop that, those taxes won't be paid is one situation. Or if you require, I'm trying to figure out requiring more than what we already do, I guess is what I'm trying to understand here. We do review it. We do go over new conditions. We basically go through an entire process as if it were a new change of zone. Yet all these years we are collecting property taxes, and it can get into, I think there's some legal implications around that as well. I won't get into those. So that's kind of just some thinking on my side as we talk about this subject. I'm happy to answer more questions on that.
Yes, Director Kern, do you feel like the language that's been proposed by Commissioner Van Pernis would make it more difficult or easier in the application, even application of the planning department's procedures when it comes to time extensions? You think saying it evenly across the board, saying that, okay, you've run out of time, your ordinance is over, now you need to reapply. From a planning perspective, is that more difficult, or is that easier when we're trying to apply things evenly?
I think it could be actually a bit more difficult in one sense, because then we're trying to potentially regulate that, or we're having to notify on one level. If we said it just expires, let's run this down for a little bit, right? We get a project, they're doing a rezoning. Let's say it's to create 49 residential house lots, and the 10 years goes by, the 5 years goes by, they get an administrative time extension. That entire 10 years, they've been paying property taxes based on that zoning. At the end of the administrative time extension, if it just died right then, we would then need to go back to real property tax, tell them, hey, the rezoning has been reverted back, it's ended. Now charge them the lower property tax rate, and maybe notifying the landowner applicant, or it's already known in their conditions. That's probably less of an issue. And then the 5 years go up by, and the economy comes back around. Somebody wants to resurrect the project, and they basically go through the same process they'd go through right now. They'd submit an application. We would review it for all the conditions. We'd say, oh, it's previously been zoned. And then we would go back to if it was approved, we'd go back to real property tax and have them do it. I'm just trying to understand what the true intent is around it, because to me, if it expired and it's basically in limbo, it has to go through this process. And if the council deemed that that's no longer appropriate, and it's done at that point in time. Does that make sense?
Commissioner Van Pernis.
Yes, the entire matter of real property taxes Mr. Kern refers to is the Shabai. The taxes stay the same, the zoning stays the same. There's no reversion to agriculture tax rates or anything else. So there's no change in the tax concerns. The applicant is delivered a huge benefit by the upgrade of zoning, which he then sells or has the opportunity to develop. The county supposedly is supposed to get certain infrastructure. The county gets nothing out of these sort of deferrals. You'll notice that my suggested language says the zoning stays. The zoning stays. There's no reversion, there's no tax consideration. If an applicant wants the upgrade, worth millions in many cases, if not more, it's up to them to pay the taxes on that increased amount. That's what they're selling the property for or developing the property for. If they choose not to develop it or don't develop it for whatever reasons, the value upgraded is still there. Let me ask you, when was the last time you saw the director downzone something from multiple residents or commercial zoning to the agriculture zoning. Never. Doesn't happen. And when was the last time you saw a developer sell this project on the basis of upgraded zoning and upgraded conditions? I would say it happens all the time. Now, does it make their job harder by adding a sunset provision? No, it makes it easier. The matter of
Mark,
sunset.
if I could just stop you for 1 second there, Commissioner Van Pernis. I want to say that you know, I agree with a lot of what you have put in here. And I think that what you have kind of stated in this proposed condition is actually fairly reflective of the practice that's happening now, where the zoning is maintained, but they have to reevaluate as if it were a new application in order to recondition it based on the changing environment of the time. And I don't think that necessarily the sunset clause is needed if we are maintaining the zoning, but instead, if we're revising the language to reflect that if the zoning, the conditions of the zoning are not met in the time that's allocated, that the conditions can be reevaluated and new conditions can be composed based on the changing in the environment surrounding the project. I think that kind of serves the intent of what we're offering here and sort of fits within the actual practices of what you're proposing, while maintaining that we're not putting a sunset on the zoning, which could have tax implications. What we're saying is we're putting a sunset on the conditions, indicating that, you know, they will need to be reevaluated should conditions surrounding the property be changed. Does that make any sense to you? Commissioner Van Pernis, go ahead.
The proposed language requires a new application. It doesn't leave the matter to the discretion of the applicant or the planning director in granting an extension. We've seen time after time, and it's been a great cause of problems and consternation where a ordinance expires, but the applicant and planning director consider it as not expired. But we'll just go ahead and talk about an extension. There's no opportunity for public input, for instance. Public input is very important in this, our job of servicing the community. Public input public input is eliminated by the present process of an extension and an expired ordinance. And I also have a lot of problems with the fact that saying something will be subdivided by a certain date means nothing to the applicant or the planning director.
Maya, go ahead. You've had your hand up for a while, I think. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to speak to the actual language that Commissioner Van Pernis proposed.
Yep.
I do have concern with the second line. At one point, I heard Commissioner Van Pernis say that the zoning would remain, but this language says if there is not such completion, the ordinance shall terminate and be of no further force or effect automatically and without any further action. So when the ordinance terminates, that means
it says except any zoning of the property granted or which was allowed by the ordinance shall remain in effect.
Yeah, so you can't do that. You cannot terminate a zoning ordinance yet keep the zoning. Legally, I don't think that works. We could have Malia chime in, but when you rezone a property, the ordinance is what changes the maps legally, and it actually changes the code. So I don't know how to go about doing that legally.
And I think that, you know, again, this is very, what is being proposed by Commissioner Van Pernis is actually similar to the practice of requiring a reconditioning of a stale ordinance. I think that if we can have language that is put into the ordinance when it's issued, that if the ordinance lapses, the commission can then recondition that ordinance based on the changing environment in the community. I think that is what, you know, and then at that point, they would have to reapply for that continuation of their ordinance, and we would then recondition it and then move forward according to the zoning that's been issued. Director Kern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So outside of an administrative time extension, which is generally allowed on most permits, it's being implied by Mr. Van Pernis that we don't allow public comments, that there's not a review process, that there isn't a recommendation done by the respective planning commission, and there isn't something that goes on at council. It implies that it just happens automatically if somebody asks for it. And I mean, you folks see it all the time. That's not necessarily the case. I know there's been some challenging applications, but when it goes through, we have to look at how the planning department has to look at how that request for a time extension of that zoning relates to every single element that exists today, the current general plan, the CDP. They have to send out notices to surrounding property owners, just like they would with a fresh application. They have to we have to send it out to all the agencies for comments. It goes through every single process that a fresh application would. I'm just confused on, I guess I'm perplexed of what the additional requirement is. I would get it if you just said, hey, it's only a time extension and every condition is locked in stone and you can't change that, and there's no public testimony now. Sure, I fully get it. But when it has to go through the same process, is it more of a notification to the applicant, and they're saying that if this expires, just be put on notice, we're gonna review these conditions. Like we're gonna take a fresh look at it. That's a different story, because then we're messaging and it's more of a communication issue. It's not necessarily changing the process.
Commissioner Van Pernis, what procedural change do you think would be needed in order to accomplish what you're trying to do? Commissioner Van Pernis.
Well, first of all, let me say that the administrative extension privilege given to the applicant and the planning director is limited by my suggested language, which can be modified, of course. So we don't get into a situation where there's administrative extensions of 5, 10, 15 years, 3 at a time, that don't add any conditions whatsoever, despite the change in time. Mr. Kern doesn't address that subject. He's talking about a new application. I think the language should be utilized so that there is a limit on administrative extensions without additional conditions and additional public input.
Hold on a second there. For most cases, the commission or the council, who is the approving authority, are in advance establishing when an administrative time condition can be issued. So that's pre-built into the permit.
And it's also it's also it's in, I believe it's codified in its practice. You can't issue multiple time extensions on a ordinance or a special permit. The only thing we can issue multiple time extensions on is like a subdivision, because it's an administrative permit. That's basically a right and entitlement to it. We're only allowed to issue one administrative time extension. So if the zoning ordinance said 5 years, we're only allowed to issue one administrative time extension up to 5 years. We can't say, oh, you know what, we actually feel like giving an administrative time extension for 10 years. We can't do that. We're maxed out at that 5 year.
That's built into the permit when it's issued. So like if for any specific permit, if the council or the issuing body decides that for this particular permit, they don't want to issue a administrative time extension, then that's within their power. The issuing body, this council, this commission could say that we don't want a administrative time extension. So that could be a case by case depending on the permit.
Which you folks have done, which they have done in the past.
Yes.
Or longer for that matter. The project's going to be a 20-year project, right? And it's not a 5-year project. We've seen that with schools.
And that has to be considered with the merits of that individual application and by the approving body. So, I mean, it's something that, you know, is a tool that is at our discretion. We're handing off the ability to approve this administratively for a certain period of time, and that's it. And in some cases, that is perfectly appropriate. Other cases, it may not be, but that's up to us, and that doesn't require a change in the ordinance in order to implement. We do that. That's our job. Commissioner Carr-Smith.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said. And we've had a lot of conversations about this. And I think the Leeward Planning Commission has had more heartburn over expired permits than Windward has. And I think that that's something that the staff has done really well over the last couple of years. Have tried to listen to our concerns. They found that Windward didn't feel the same way. They did make some suggestions as to how things could improve. And I think that you guys need to have the latitude to take things on a case-by-case basis. I don't support Mr. Van Pernis's suggestions. Thank you.
Commissioner Van Pernis.
Yes. The administrative extensions may be 5 years at a time. I'm not suggesting there'll be 10 or 15-year extensions, or there were, but administrative extensions could be 5 years, then another 5 years, then another 5 years.
That's not true.
No,
That's
yes,
not true at all.
Then there's been a change.
The administrative time extensions are built into the issuance of each permit. So each permit, they could have 10 administrative time extensions if the council determines that's appropriate for that permit. In most cases, the approving body will issue one administrative time extension for that permit, allowing the applicant the opportunity to have a time extension without going back to the council or the commission. Every permit could be different. We could review a permit tomorrow or next month and say, absolutely no time extensions. And that would be okay. That's within our authority. It's a case-by-case thing. And I think the merits of each individual application would have to be taken at that time. Commissioner Van Pernis, go ahead. And then I think we're going to move towards wrapping this up and then moving this discussion on to the merits of the next applications. Commissioner Van Pernis, go ahead.
I think at a minimum, we should somehow indicate in every application that the time limits given, be they extended or not, that the application and the recommendation and the ordinance expires and is of no further force and effect, and eliminate this practice of, well, that doesn't mean anything. You can ask for an extension at any time, even after your ordinance and its conditions expire.
Got it. I absolutely hear you on that, and appreciate your perspective. And I think that in the future, when we are reviewing an application for a change of zone, we can try to work together to put some language that applicant will hopefully agree with, that will alert them to the need to come back and recondition their approval should they lapse. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody on that on the next actual application that we get. With that, I think we can conclude that administrative matter. And let's see, what else do we have? Oh, darn, wrong script again. I got too many scripts up. Okay. Okay, well, I guess with that, oh, Commissioner Van Pernis, final thought?
Yeah, this is a different matter. I'm not sure what category it falls under, but I think it needs to be brought up. We all may recall Mr. Kern as a private individual being a spokesman and represented for the Campbell Trust on local property. My understanding, and I would like to be corrected if I'm wrong, my understanding that after Mr. Kern became the active planning director, he approved the subdivision of the property that was.
Commissioner Van Pernis, this is again not an agendized item. If you'd like to request something specifically to be included on a future agenda.
I don't, it's also with Campbell on that, it was discussed and represented that the public trail easement on property would be considered. Mr.
Well,
Kern.
maybe perhaps this would be something that the county can follow up with you independently of this, because again, this is not an agendized item. So we would be in violation.
Let's agendize it for administrative matters then, because Ms. Campbell, I understand, is also the attorney now.
We can work. Hold on. We can work with staff.
Well, this matter may not wait.
Cannot discuss this any further. Could you please mute Commissioner Van Pernis? Thank you. Moving forward, we've already said mahalo to our departing commissioners. Just want to say one more thank you to both of you. We're really going to miss you guys. You guys have been so awesome and had such great leadership and brought so much value to the commission. Once again, thank you so much. And with that, I would hope that either one of you could make a motion to adjourn your last. Go ahead. Either of you? No, anyone else?
Motion to.
Sorry, Chair, sorry, real quick. I wanted to say mahalo to Perry and Nancy, and also say that, sorry, my dogs. As of this Monday, we changed assignments again. So Jay Yoshimoto will be taking over the Leeward Planning Commission going forward. So I've enjoyed working with you all, and I think you guys are doing great work. And I also appreciate that you guys take this so seriously and have you know, done your duties well. So mahalo everybody, and aloha and ahui ho.
Mahalo, thank you.
This is a sad day. We're losing 3 members of our family. So I'm sorry to hear that, Malia, but I'm sure you'll be around and we'll interact in the future with you a bunch. Really appreciate everything that you've done with us. So thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Carr-Smith, second by Commissioner Kealoha. All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion.
Discussion on the motion, go ahead.
I would like to make sure the conflict of interest issue of Mr. Kern concerning.
That is not related to the motion on the floor. You are welcome.
Agendized.
Again.
Is agendized. I'm asking it to be put on the agenda.
I'm asking you to stop talking about something that's not on this agenda. You can work with the county staff to get this on a future agenda. Please go ahead. With that,
I make a motion that Mr. Van Pernis is being repeatedly inappropriate. That'll be my last motion.
We've already got a motion on the floor relating.
I know. I'm being.
Can we have a vote on that? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Hoo-yo.
You guys.
Go running out of here, Nancy.
Aloha, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Perry. Thank you, Perry. All
Thank
right.
you guys so much. Bye.
Oh.